Chocho sampo pa gyu trashi pa tuche tempe chinle yarngoda pege drolor zampe zebrache pande lame shabla solvade Omo a guru vajradara suma timuni shasane kar Uta vardani shri badra varsa manya sarva siddhi hum Om guru nishasane karma Uta vardani shri badra varsa manya sarva Om guru vajradara Sumatimo nishasaneka Uta vardani shra Varsa manya sarva siddhi Om guru vajradar Sumatimo nishasane karma Uta Shri Bhadra Varsa manya sarva siddhi Om guru vajradar Sumatimo nishasane karma uta varda nishri badra varsa manya sarva siddhi Om guru vajradar Sumatimo nishasane karma uta varda nishri badra varsa manya sarva siddhi Om guru vajradara Sumatimo nishasane karma Uta vardani shri badra varsa manya sarva siddhi Om guru vajradara sumatimo nishasan Uta vardani shri badra varsa manya sarva siddhi Om guru vajradara sumatimo nishasane Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumatimo Nishasane Kar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumatimo Nishasane Kar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumatimo Nishasane Kar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumatimo Nishasane Kar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumatimo Nishasane Kar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumatimo Nishasane Kar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumatimo Nishasane Kar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumatimo Nishasane Kar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumatimo Nishasane Kar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajra Dara Sumatimo Nishasane Kar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Lo Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tudan Dagi Tenyerme Chikto Chingi Alo Makyuke Kudan Dagi Lo ma kyu ke sundan da gi nga, ma kyu ke tukdan da gi yi, tuen yer me chik tu, lo om muni muni maha muni, shakya muni svoha sa shi pöge chushi me do tram, rirab lingshe nide gembadi, sange shinto mikte ulwarki, drogu namda shingla chöpar, sho ye dam guru ratna mandrala kam niryata yami, sange chodan tsoge chonamla, chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi, dagi chushe gibe sonam ki drula penchir, sange drupar sho, sange chodan tsoge chonamla, chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi, dagi chushe gibe sonam ki, drola penchir sange drupar sho, sange chodan tsoge chonam la, chancho pardo dani kyapsu chi, dagi chushe gibe sonam ki, drola penchir sange drupar sho.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Good morning. Let's start from a fundamental principle that we've already looked at in the previous days, which is there are no results without causes. In other words, we cannot experience something for which we ourselves have not created the causes. Starting from this principle, if we want a certain type of result, we need to create causes that are consistent with that type of result. One of the mistakes that we do often is that we confuse conditions with causes. Let me just give you a simple example. I go out and one day I get cold. I catch a cold. What happens? The immune system gets lower when we feel cold, and then I get a cold. So what is the cause of the cold? Is it the cold that I felt, or some kind of virus, a latent virus that I already had? The cause is always before. What happens in the present moment is called condition. So the condition is what is here and now. The cause was generated before and often accumulated in the past. This same example of the cold, we have this tendency of seeing others through our own eyes, in the sense we try to judge and see others based on how we are. So, for example, for various reasons, I'm not going to get into it, but just in a few words, and when I was, since a child, I never really suffered the temperatures. If it was too hot or too cold, it didn't bother me. But I could feel it, but I just didn't care so much. And I didn't take enough care, let's say. And so over the years, health problems were created based on this habit of mine. Nothing serious, but I can't today be barefoot in a cold place. If I sit down on a cold stone, or if I'm barefoot on a cold floor, that even within a few minutes, I feel a lot of pain. So if I see someone barefoot in a cold place or seated on a cold stone, I feel like they need to do something, but maybe it's good for that person. But if I'm the cold that I feel in that moment, is it is it the cause, or is it a condition of something that I accumulated in the past? I didn't take care enough of my health for years, and it generated a kind of balance. And so my body doesn't react well when I feel cold, mostly related to my feet. So the cold would be a condition through which a result comes, because in this present moment, we add up the things that were accumulated in the past. Another simple example, at a certain point between two people, something happens, and there's a big fight. I mean, this happens, right? But what created the fight in that moment, it was that small thing, the one that said something unexpected or whatever it was. But the real reason for that conflict are small, accumulated conflicts that were accumulated over time, pushed under the rug, and then at a certain point, one opens the rug, throws open the rug, and the fight happens. If you lift up the rug and it's clean, then there wouldn't be a fight. So causes come before, and conditions are what's happening in the present moment. So if we want a certain type of result, we need to create certain types of causes. If we want to avoid certain types of results, we need to avoid also certain types of causes. Like saying, if I have a garden and I want to grow tomatoes, I need to plant tomato seeds. If I don't want chili peppers, then I shouldn't plant seeds of chili peppers, because regardless of how much I want tomatoes, if I'm only planting chili pepper seeds, I'm not going to have tomatoes. So it's important to have this awareness. And in our spiritual practice, in our path of developing awareness, concentration, love, wisdom, satisfaction, etc., along this graduated path towards enlightenment, it's not enough to meet the condition. What we study, what we meditate on, this all happens in the present moment, and that's not enough to be able to, in Tibetan we use gyu ming ge cherba, to ripen our mind stream. It's not enough to ripen our mind stream. So certain levels of awareness, the preciousness of this life, for example, so that it's no longer something conceptual, but is something that has ripened as something spontaneous and deep. Because so for this to happen, theoretical knowledge is not enough. We need to generate causes, which we translate simply as accumulating merit. So to ripen our mind, to grow along the path, we need to do these two steps. We need to accumulate virtuous causes and eliminate the negative causes that we accumulated in the past, because we have with us also a kind of inertia, a force of negative actions from the past, stupid things we've done, with awareness or without, whether we remember it or not. Even there are things that we've done with awareness that we don't remember, but not remembering doesn't mean that they don't exist. So we have with us a kind, it's called karmic force, a non-virtuous karmic force that we keep with us. So we need to generate virtuous causes, positive causes, and oppose the negative ones and try not to create new ones. Along this process, it's said by many, many masters. Here there's the reference of Lama Tsongkhapa, who explains very clearly that among all the methods that exist to help our mind stream ripen, so it's no longer just knowledge, but a realized experience, one needs to entrust oneself to the practice of the 7 limbs. The practice of the 7 limbs, there are 7 steps, 7 passages that Buddha Shakyamuni taught and transmitted from generation to generation, getting all the way to us. And a tremendous amount of importance was given to this practice. These 7 practices are quite simple, really, but there's 7 things that we should do daily, ideally. And this is the 5th Dharma of preparation. Yesterday, we concluded the 4th, and we got to the point where we had generated the visualization of our commitment being, the visualization of Guru Buddha. We invited the wisdom beings that became inseparable and of the same nature, and then we talked about very briefly the practice of ablution, the bath offering. But the main practice is the practice of the 7-limb prayer, and that's what we'll look at today. And tomorrow we'll look at the 6th Dharma of preparation, requesting and receiving blessings. So we have a lot of things to look at, so let's go straight to the point. Otherwise, I get lost in long introductions, which sometimes is fine, and sometimes it's just not the right moment for them. So the practice of 7 limbs is very important for us to generate virtuous causes and eliminate the negative causes that we have already accumulated. And then there are also other things together with that we'll see. So this is the practice that was always done, the Buddha taught it. And in all the centuries, all the lineages, when we look at the images of the great masters who are there, and we ask ourselves, well, what did they do? They did the practice of 7-limb prayer, and we follow their example. So the 7-limb practice is made up mostly of it's made up of 7 parts, the 7 limbs, 7 aspects, 7 things that should be done. They are prostrations, offerings, purification of negativities, rejoicing, asking, requesting the presence of Guru Buddha, requesting teachings, and then dedications. These are the 7. Let's remember that the 7 limbs are not, it's not about reciting something. Oh, you know, I just, I, I can just, you know, just reciting the practice of the 7 limbs is not enough. You know, I prostrate, I offer real and imagined offerings, etc. You know, you can repeat them to remind yourself what they are, but it's an inner process, and it's of enormous value if you do it with the constancy. So let's start with the first of the 7. The first are the prostrations. Let me just see if I've missed something. Here it says, for example, Lama Tsongkhapa makes reference. He says, when, where is it that he says it? He says, practicing Dharma, following the path without the accumulation of merit is like having many seeds without water. So we have the part of listening and understanding, but we don't have the water to germinate our seeds. And there's a very long part that talks about the importance of the 7 limbs. It says also that when we try to understand and we're not able to understand, or we listen and we don't really understand what we're hearing, when we meditate and we're not able to ripen our mind stream, we're not able to transform something inside. At that point, we need to accumulate merit and purify, and so we should do the practice of 7 limbs. And if I think that when we look at all of those who came before us along this path, they all gave a tremendous amount of importance to the 7 limbs. Lama Tsongkhapa, for example, when he already had a very vast amount of knowledge. To give you an example, he began his formation, his studies, when he was 3 years old. And a master came by, lived near his parents' house, and he said, "Your child is special. Please, can you entrust him to me? Because I want to train him as, you know, into to help him in the best way possible." And so he began at 3 years old, and I thought, well, 3 years old, that sounds too early. But then at a certain point, I was reading this book about mathematicians, and there was one, I remember, it said that at 3 years old, he was correcting his father's books in the store. So there are special children, you know. So they're special children, you know, that have special qualities for mathematics, and also special qualities for the Dharma. At 5 years old, Lama Tsongkhapa was doing the self-initiation of Heruka, something that today in the monastery very few practitioners can do. He had more than 100 masters, but towards the end of his life, most of his masters who were still alive actually became his own disciples. And at a certain point, Lama Tsongkhapa, he had a level of knowledge that was incredible. When we read his books, it's frightening, incredible, this level of knowledge and clarity that he had. on the teachings of Buddha. It was very special. For example, in his books, he never says, this is like this because it's just like this. No, everything everything that he introduces, he says, this is like this because, and then gives the reference of Buddha's sutras. I said, other masters said this and that, but following this logic, this is like this for this and that reason. And if you had some kind of hypothetical doubt, here's the answer for that. So he doesn't leave any space for doubt. And sometimes I would study some text. Sometimes I would feel, I already trust you. Let's just go straight to the conclusion. You know, maybe 2 lines of conclusion and 2 pages of the how and the why. That's also, there's a proverb from Tibet that says, when you don't know something, when you need information about something, ask Putin. Putin, Tamche Kecha, he wrote about every possible subject, over 100 volumes. Instead, when you don't have the certainty about something, ask Lama Tsongkhapa. In his writings, he didn't leave any kind of space for doubts. He was extremely clear. And at a certain point in his life, when he had already a very high level of knowledge, he felt still that he had not really realized the ultimate nature of reality completely. And at the time, his main master, his main guide, was actually Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom. He has, at a certain point in his life, the visions of Manjushri. And at the beginning, he didn't believe it. It's said that there are different types of visions that one can have. You can have a wisdom being can connect with us through our dreams, or through a vision, kind of like a daydreaming, or as if a vision, like a kind of hallucination right in front of us while we're awake. And at a certain point, he had this vision of him while he was awake. And at first, he asked himself if it could be true or not. He said, maybe it's my mind that's just playing games on me. Maybe it's a negative spirit that's trying to take me away from my path. How can I be sure? So first of all, he said, let me ask questions that I know the answer to, but really, really difficult, deep, subtle Dharma questions. Because so whoever is able to answer is not just any spirit. So first he asked a few questions, and the answers were perfect. He said, so this is not just any being, but how do I know if this is Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom, or just a game of my own mind? I'll ask questions that I don't know the answer to. He asked specific questions. I mean, most of us, even if we just read if we read the questions, we would just leave it there. So I don't even understand the question. You can imagine how difficult the answer is. And so he asked these questions, and the answers came with a perfect logic. And so he started believing and trusting him. And he then started to be guided by Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom. And at one point, he asked Buddha Manjushri, I need to realize emptiness. I want to realize this path. And I see that with the resources that I have, I'm not able. Maybe I should look for a master in India so that I can create a favorable condition to be able to practice. And Manjushri said, no, you have all the knowledge you need. Don't go to India. Go to this place. Go to the Okachule in the mountains near the Indian border and do a retreat. And do a retreat of the 7 limbs, of the preparation practices. Do this retreat. So, so Lama Tsongkhapa, he had many disciples. He wasn't there alone, but he left everything and just goes. Before, he would do retreat in one place, and then everyone would find out that he was there, and he would go somewhere else, to be more alone, and this happened again and again, until he was able to find a place that was really remote, and he was there with just these few, he was with 8 disciples that are represented up there. Very few disciples stayed with him. So the first part of the retreat that he did was the retreat of prostrations. And Lama Tsongkhapa, it's said that, I don't remember the exact number, but it's something like 1.5 million prostrations as a physical exercise. It was a cave, so the flooring was on stone. So 1.5 million prostrations on stone, and the place where he did it, even today you can see. So you can see where his feet were, and where he would pass his hands. The stone is actually marked. So an enormous amount of prostrations, an enormous amount of number of mantras of purification. And so he dedicated about 1.5 years to the 7 limbs. And at the end, he had a dream where he met all the great masters of India, whose text he studied. One named Buddha Palita, and he dreamt of it. So when he woke up, he took the text of Buddha Palita, and that was the condition through which he was able to realize emptiness, the ultimate nature of reality, much beyond a conceptual understanding. Just to say, what was the tool that Manjushri gave Lama Tsongkhapa to realize the Dharma beyond the conceptual level? The tool he gave him was the 7-limb prayer. So this is not a beginner's practice. This is a practice for everyone. And what I realized, that the more prepared people, the more mature people, those on the path who are the most mature, who are the most prepared, are the ones who give constant attention and care, practice with the 7 limbs. Instead, new beginners, newer practitioners, they all want really high, quote unquote, high level things. So this is not a beginner's practice. This is an extremely important practice that all who were able to achieve realizations and get out of their own samsara, they followed this path, and we have the great fortune that they shared it with us. So we too, we can do this practice. This first practice is the practice of prostrations. The practice of prostrations in Tibetan, it's called chaktsel. Chaktsel, you can translate it in different ways. In Sanskrit, it's namo, which means also I make praise, I honor. In Tibetan, chaktsel for prostrations has particular meaning, because chak means hand, hands. It's the honorific form of hand, and tsel is to request. So I make request with my hands, could be one meaning, or I make praise. Also, Chak and Tibetan language is interesting. The same word written in the same way, Chak means both hands, but also means seal. Chagya. Chak, Chagya means seal. So the first part of Chagyal is Chak. Tsel means to request. So I'm asking for the seal. The seal makes reference to something, how can I say? That something that you can't separate. There's you can't take that off. It's sealed. The seal along the path is the union of love and wisdom, method and wisdom, bliss and emptiness, which is the fundamental part of our path. And so when we make prostrations, first of all, the easiest gesture is to unite our hands. When we put our hands together, the right hand represents method, masculine energy, and the left hand represents wisdom, feminine energy. And and bliss, right hand, emptiness, left hand. When we unite the two hands together, this represents the union of method and wisdom, this correct balance between masculine and feminine energy that goes beyond concepts of man and women. It represents also the union of bliss and emptiness, this inner state that realizes the ultimate nature of all phenomenon, which is one of the most important parts of our path. And when we make this gesture, this making praise, in the Tibetan tradition, each tradition is a little bit different. In the Tibetan tradition, the thumbs stay inside. Other traditions keep the thumbs outside. Keeping the thumbs inside represents two things. One, we're making praise and our hands are not empty. It's a kind of jewel that we're offering. The deeper meaning is that when we put our hands like this, the thumbs touch the base of our ring finger, and then we unite them. This represents, it's like a positive interdependence. For the subtle energy winds can absorb into our heart. So this represents creating the conditions to be able to generate a deeper state of consciousness. And in the Vajrayana path, it's one of the most important points, like in self-healing practice towards the end where everything absorbs to the heart. To have this control, know how to direct one's own subtle winds to the heart is very important. So when we make prostrations, we remember this. And touching, coming into contact, and it's like coming into contact with our very subtle mind. The only way to come into contact with our very subtle mind is for all the energy winds, make all the energy winds to absorb at our heart. But what I'm saying now, to some might mean a lot, to others might mean nothing at all. But I'm not going to explain more details, otherwise we would stay only here and not go forward. So we unite our hands. Prostration comes from body, speech, and mind, and let's remember that making prostrations is not an act of inferiority. Instead, we are greeting with praise. We're praising. It's also an antidote to our own arrogance. Because arrogance, when we feel superior to someone else, that creates distance. Where there's arrogance, one cannot connect, one can't receive. one cannot see the other person when there's arrogance. Arrogance make mer- arrogance creates blindness, and one can't see beyond himself. So it's very important to go beyond one's own arrogance, and the practice of prostrations, one of the meanings is to overcome arrogance. It's an antidote to arrogance, not because I'm putting myself, making myself inferior, but I am recognizing your presence, and I want to get close to you. I greet you. I praise you. It's similar to when we see someone and we want to greet them. As we are greeting someone, we're taking away these blocks between us and the distance between us. It depends also how we greet people. It's possible to greet someone arrogantly. It's possible to greet someone with this connection with the other person. So our objective here is to take away our arrogance and allow ourselves to connect. When we make prostrations, they have a double function. We're creating closeness, we're creating positive karma, and we're eliminating negativities. Normally when we make prostrations of body, speech, and mind. So the prostration of the body is when we unite our hands. You can do it in different ways. The simplest way is when we put our hands together at the heart, and we can slightly bow forward, or we can put our hands at our crown, at our forehead, at our throat, and our heart. So crown, and the crown and the forehead is the body, the throat is the speech, and the heart is our mind. We can make prostrations, or inner prostration, the whole prostrations, entire prostrations, where we stand up and we put our hands at our crown, at our forehead, our throat, and then at the center of our heart. And at that point, we go down. We touch our hands on the floor, and we put our feet, our knees, and the palms of our hands and our forehead onto the ground, and then we stand up. It's important that when we can do it slowly when we go down, but once we're on the ground, we do it quickly. They say that this is important. Then it can be a kind of laziness. It's not a good thing to stay a long time on the ground. You can. So when you go down with the prostrations, you touch your forehead to the ground, and then you get up quickly. You can do a complete prostration where you touch crown, forehead, throat, heart. Then you go down, and then you lay down completely. First, you can touch with your head, and then you put your arms forward and your legs straight out back, and then you unite your hands, you touch your head, and then you get up. This is a long prostration, and there's some variables. There's some who do long prostrations. They don't sometimes they don't actually bring the hands back to the head, but just raise the wrists and the hands. Or maybe some who do long prostrations, some people who don't even touch the forehead before straightening out the whole body. I've seen people do in both ways. I mean, very high-level practitioners do in both ways. I imagine they're both valid. I do, and I learned to touch my head first on the ground, then put my arms out, bring my hands back to my forehead, and then get back up. That's just in a few words. This is how to make a prostration. There are some texts, there are some descriptions that say that you should do prostrations in the right way, because if not, for example, when you go down, you shouldn't keep fists or staying too long, laying down, or it talks about some possible negative results. But I think for us, what's important is to do it with awareness, um, to the best of our ability. This reminds me of a story of a friend. He was the brother of one of my teachers. His name was Pema, and I haven't seen him in many years, and he had Down syndrome, and his brother went to do a he went to do a prostration, a retreat of prostrations, and he would do everything his brother would do, and he followed him to Bodh Gaya, and and he everything that his brother would do, he would do, and he did everything perfectly. But when he was doing prostrations and he would get down on the ground, he just wouldn't get up, and it's fine. I mean, everyone does his best, knowing that it's better to follow the indications. It's a little bit like, for me, the way I see it is, we have a system that was used for centuries and centuries by people who had great success. Why should I make any changes? Why should I try to do it my way? There's no reason. Let's follow let's follow the system that has worked for centuries. So prostrations, ideally, we should do them when we do a practice. At least we put our hands together when we sit, when we're seated in meditation, when we get to the part of the prostrations, we can unite our hands at the crown, at our throat and our heart, for body, speech, and mind. When we want to physically do the prostrations, we can do 3. The accumulation of prostrations is a beautiful practice. I know many masters and very prepared people who do at least 100 prostrations a day. It's wonderful for the spiritual practice, and it also physically, it's very beneficial. Instead of going to the gym, I can assure you that doing 100 prostrations a day, it would be very beneficial. There was a time when I lived in India when I would do 100 prostrations a day. Personally speaking, I preferred not counting them. Otherwise, my mind was there, how many I made. Instead, at the beginning, I counted how many I would do, and then I would just base my prostrations on time. So I would do about a half an hour a day. So in a half an hour, you can do a little bit more than 100 prostrations. So dedicate a moment for prostrations. Something that's very important that I want to underline, even if it's probably obvious, that during prostrations, it's not through pain or suffering that one purifies. I've seen people I've seen people really hurt themselves while doing prostrations. I've seen people really hurt their knees, for example, and then people would say, no, I need to purify. No, this is an erroneous view. It's important that when we do prostrations, if you want to accumulate prostrations, you can wear knee pads in front of the stupa of Lama Ganchen. There's a wooden table like a door, a little bit longer, so that you have the space to extend your arms. And in the center, you put a kind of of cushion, a subtle cushion, a thin cushion, a cover, and that's where you put your knees and your chest, and then for your hands, you can use your hands. They're like two little pieces, triangular pieces of fabric to help you with your hands slide forward. I've seen people use gloves. You can use many different things. What's important is that you shouldn't hurt yourself while doing prostrations. I've seen people insist. One person even had to have surgery on his knee. That's not what we want. And it's a very beautiful and it's a beneficial practice. When we do the preliminaries, there are also retreats of preliminaries. Tenzin now, for example, monk Tenzin, he's already begun this retreat. He's preparing, and on the 1st of August, he'll start his main retreat. And what he's doing now, then he'll do 100,000 prostrations, 100,000 water offerings, 100,000 recitations of Vajrasattva mantra. This is the accumulation of the various preliminary practice. Normally, to do 100,000 prostrations, one should take 3 months if you dedicate all day to it. But what's important is that it's an exercise, it's a practice that helps us mentally, emotionally, and physically, and spiritually. But each one should have his own experience. So on a practical level, when we do physical prostrations, we put our hands to our crown, to our forehead, to our throat, and to our heart. Then we go down. The short prostration, we put our knees and our hands and our head to the ground, and then we get up. Depending on the description given in many texts, it would be an error, but it's something we should avoid, even though it's done often. For example, at the beginning of teachings, if we make prostrations, often there's this attitude of wanting to make prostrations in a hurry. So people go down and without even coming up halfway, they already do the second or the third. This would be the wrong way to do a prostration. One should touch, get back up, stand up, and then again you do the second, and then the third. And then with the third, at the very end, you again touch with your hands for the final conclusion without going down. When we make long prostrations, it's the same thing. We start with our hands at our crown, forehead, throat, heart. We touch with our head or not, depending on the system. Then we extend our body completely. And then as soon as you are completely extended, you can touch. You can bring your hands back to your crown, or just raise your hands and then you get back up. The prostrations of speech is making praises. It's when we verbally praise. This is a prostration of speech, and of the mind is thinking and recognizing. It's making praises mentally, thinking about the qualities of the one to whom we are prostrating. Can be, if we are prostrating to Buddha, we think about the qualities of Buddha, of love and wisdom, purity, etc., etc. Different ways that we can do this. And I invite you to take the Guru Puja, where there are the various verses of prostrations, where there are the various verses that talk about the qualities, the specific qualities, and one can think about those qualities, then make a prostration. Thinking about these qualities, that becomes also a prostration of mind. Just wanted to put some emphasis to encourage you to experience, to try this practice, to try to do more prostrations. Create a place in the house where you can do this. Maybe you start with 21 a day, and then little by little you increase it. You take a commitment and trying to get up to at least 100 prostrations a day. One master of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Khyentse Ling Rinpoche, he physically was quite robust, but also heavy. And every day he did 100 prostrations, regardless of what was going on. One of my friends in India had the commitment to do 100 prostrations a day. And one day he was traveling. We were together, and we were in the bus, and he hadn't had time to do it. He waited for everyone to fall asleep, and in the corridor of in between the seats, he started making prostrations until the bus had to violently brake, and he ended up almost by the driver, and then he stopped. But the practice of prostrations traditionally comes also together with pilgrimages. But the problem that we have in our culture is that we have other inputs. We have this idea that we should go on our knees, that we should be sacrificing ourselves. No, it's an act of respect. It's an act of humility, where we're requesting blessings, and we shouldn't be suffering. I've seen people do pilgrimages where they get up, where they make a long prostration, and then they take 2 steps forward, and then another prostration, and then you take 2 steps forward. There's also there's a pilgrimage of prostrations around Mount Kailash, or from the region of Kham all the way to Lhasa. There are very few who do it, but it's still done. So we don't need to do long prostrations from Milan to Albagnano, but Phabongkha Rinpoche, for example, the author of Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, every time he went to find his guru was in a monastery. And obviously at the time in Tibet, there were no other means of transport. One could walk or with animals. And when he would get to the valley where there was the monastery of his master, as soon as he saw the monastery, even from afar, he would start making prostrations. And when he would leave, he would do the same backwards, and he wouldn't turn his back until he had completely lost sight of the monastery. So if we look at who put the most emphasis into these practices, are those who had the highest realizations, and so we should try to follow them, follow their example, respecting our own abilities and our time. But it's a very important practice for which we should have our own experience. So we should experience instead of it's simple practice, practical experience. It's important to try to do it. If you do it within the context of the preliminary practice, that changes a lot. So if you have this commitment to do, or you want to do 100 prostrations a day, do it within the practice of the preliminary practices, where you sit So you will do your prostrations in front of Guru Buddha, in front of your generated merit field, and then once you conclude the other limbs and the seven limb in practice, then you can conclude. So you should do it within the practice. It's not that you put on the radio with the news going on and you start doing prostrations like exercise, looking at it just like a physical exercise. Instead, there's a very important element, aspect of our spiritual practice, and should be done within the practice of the preliminaries. I think it's quite clear. Just one more thing about this. When we begin teachings, it's not an obligation to make prostrations at the beginning. It's not that one has to do it. It's an act of humility. It's an act to cultivate humbleness, the connection, gratitude, and to open our own heart and our mind to listening to the teachings. But it's not something that we're obliged to do. Those who want to do it, can do it. Those who don't want to do it, don't have to do it. And in the Dharma practice, when you want to practice a little more seriously, making prostrations is a very important practice. I invite everyone to have their own experience, to try it, try to give some constancy to this practice. When we make prostrations, the verse that we recite, normally, when we put our hands to our head, we say Om Namo Manjushye, Namo Sushye at our throat, Namo Uttam Shriya Soha at our heart. The specific meaning of this mantra, I don't know. But the reason why we do it, it's said that it multiplies the benefits of the prostrations. My masters did it like this, and they showed me like this. Namo Manjushye, Namo Sushye, Namo Uttam Shriya Soha. I don't know specifically what the meaning is, but generally speaking, when we do this is what we recite when we make the prostrations. If we make the 100,000 prostrations, there are two different moments where we can make this accumulation. That if we do it at the beginning of the seven limb practice, then we are making praise. We're cultivating faith and humbleness if we're doing it at the beginning. Or we can accumulate prostrations also in the third of the seven limb prayers as a practice of purification. And there are other visualizations if you want to do it as a practice of purification. It's common to do some at the beginning and then some as the third limb. It's also beautiful. When one wakes up in the morning, one can make 3 prostrations in front of a holy image, or in front of the altar, or just imagining the holy being in front, and then before going to bed, another 3 prostrations. This is very common. It's a practice that helps us when we wake up. It helps us connect immediately with our spiritual practice when we wake up. So, and also before going to bed. Also, if we're in front of our masters or we go to a holy place, it's normal to make prostrations. It's something that's good for us. But there aren't any rules that one needs to do, because arrogance in the end is only harmful to ourselves. And where we cultivate our humbleness, there's also this fact of being able to see others without comparing ourselves to them. This is important. When I come to a place and I respect that place, it means that I'm open to receiving from that place. Okay. Good. Let's go on. Is everything clear about the prostrations? Okay, the second part. The second of the 7 limbs is about making offerings. In the second of the 6 dharmas of preparation, we arranged the offerings, we prepared the offerings. Now we're offering them, and there are different ways of making offerings. I mean, why do we make offerings? First of all, we make offerings because it's a way to materialize our respect, our gratitude, our faith, and this is a way of cultivating these qualities. Another very important reason for making offerings, using a phrase of Saint Francis, is by giving that we receive. Even Nagarjuna in the text where he talks about the emptiness, the root of the middle way, and Lama Tsongkhapa too says that Buddha described generosity being the first of the 6 perfections to perfect, because when we share, when we offer, it creates the causes to then be able obtain, to receive. And along our path, having necessary conditions for the spiritual practice is very important. So if I offer, then I create the causes to then be able to receive. And there are 2 ways of offering. I can offer to someone who is spiritually at the same level or inferior to me, then we call that an act of generosity. Instead, if I offer something to someone who is more spiritually developed than me, it's called an offering. So in this case, by making offerings to Guru Buddha, we offer the best of what we have, what we can give. This creates an interdependence of giving to then be able to receive. And it's a very important point. It's an important tool to accumulate positive energies, the so-called merits, generosity, sharing, giving, the gift. This is one of the easiest and most important tools that we have to create positive energy, merits. So in the spiritual life and in our daily life, making offerings to Guru Buddha. So when we make offerings, one of the reasons is that it's one of the tools that allows us to grow along our path. We create this interdependence of giving to then be able to receive. And it's in this receiving, these are the causes that we generate that will allow us to realize. It's not that I give a glass of water to get a glass of water. I offer, and as I share and offer, I'm generating those positive causes that will show up. They will manifest in different ways, including the states of consciousness that we want to realize. So making offerings is very important along our path. It's not something, it has nothing to do, it's not any kind of exchange. Like, oh, I make offerings to Guru Buddha, so and help me, or I need more support, so I'll make more offerings. Now, I make an offering because it's by giving, it's sharing that I can generate that energy, those necessary causes to then be able to receive and experience positive and virtuous results. Um, it's Guru Buddha. I'm not offering to make him happy or for some kind of exchange, not at all. Because this mentality sometimes exists. Oh, I need a lot of blessings now because I'm having so much trouble. Let me make lots of offerings. Once I heard someone who, from my point of view, someone who was doing something strange, to not say anything else. He was he was testing Jesus. Well, you you take you you take all of the money that you take all the money you earn and you have to give it to Jesus, and Jesus has to help you. Of course, there's an intermediary. I think it's strange. Buddhism instead, but sometimes it's not understood correctly. We don't make offerings to get something. It's not an exchange. It's normal. It comes to us, this idea, we need more things, it's a difficult moment, we make more offerings. I mean, you can make more offerings to create merits and the causes that will then support us um, for what we need. But it's not like, oh, you gave me little when I gave you so much. No, it's not a giving to have. This relationship doesn't exist. It's a relationship of offering because Guru Buddha, he acts as, how can I say, he gives us the possibility of offering, like when we have when we when we um, when we are generous, the other person allows us to be generous, you know. But to say like, oh, I did this and you didn't do what you should have done, or you didn't even thank me, you know, that has nothing to do with generosity. That's business, giving to get something back, some kind of exchange. This is not an exchange. Here we're talking about offering. And when I offer, what I receive is not coming from the one I'm offering to. It's coming from me. I'm generating something inside myself, and it's not coming from anyone else. But for me to be able to generate this positive energy inside me, I need the other person to whom I'm offering. So I'm using you somehow. And it's like using the other. I'm giving to you so that I can accumulate merits. It's it's not even really a give to receive. It's a give because by offering to you, in reality, I'm able to generate something, but I need the other. And a key point here is that it's not an exchange. Like, I'm not using you to accumulate merit. You know, it has to be a sincere act of generosity. I'm giving because I want you to be happy. And when you give it sincerely, when you give something sincerely, that generates the necessary positive energy. And in the same way, when we make offerings to Guru Buddha, it's not an exchange, it's an act where we manifest, we materialize our gratitude, our respect, our love, our faith in something material. We offer it. And this has power too, to generate particular joy. It's Lama Ganchen put a lot of emphasis here, and he would say you need to have your own experience, this joy of offering, how offering generates this inner state of wellness, well-being, of happiness, of joy. And Rinpoche put a lot of emphasis during ceremonies and pujas. He would make he would say, you all try it. Make offerings, make small offerings. Is there an impact? Is there a result? Just try it. How do you feel making offerings? And generally, it brings pleasure, it brings joy. My personal experiences, every time I had the possibility of making offerings, I had it, it brought me, it always brought me more joy to give than to receive. So in this second limb, we have Guru Buddha in front of us and we make offerings. And the offerings that we make are mostly the external offerings, internal, secret, and emptiness offerings and offerings of realization. So we talked about this before. Even here, we could spend days talking about the offerings. I mean, these 2 points, prostrations and offerings. In the previous generations in Tibet, they put so much emphasis. Even looking at this text now of Lama Tsongkhapa, there's so many verses, the references, explanations about prostrations and offerings, and even the Guru Puja, the part of the prostrations and the offerings are longer. They're much longer, and the other parts of the 7 limbs are shorter, because these are the 2 main points where we can generate this positive energy. When we make offerings, we can offer the 7, actually 8 types of offerings. Those that traditionally are given when someone would arrive, like an important guest. In ancient India, it was like this. So an important guest, a traveler, the first thing when he would arrive, he was given water to drink and then water to wash his feet. After which, he was given flowers, then incense, light, perfume rubbed on the chest, food, and music. This is how in ancient India an important guest would be received. And similarly, we have Guru Buddha in front of us. We have the various offering bowls. So first of all, we offer water. We can do it together with the mudras, these gestures, and when we do them, we begin with the left hand outside and the right inside, facing outwards, and we snap our fingers, and then we imagine that from our heart, the divinities, the celestial offering goddesses emanate from our heart, and they bring the offerings to Guru Buddha in front of us. Each one, so we snap our fingers. Om Guru Buddha. So then, if we offer, first of all, we offer water, argam. So we open, we imagine that the celestial offering goddesses emanate from our heart, and as we do the gesture, we do the lotus turning mudra like in self-healing, and then we make the mudra of that offering, argam, water for drinking, and then we close with the right hand outside, the left inside, facing inward, and all those divinities reabsorb back into our heart. You can recite in different ways. In this way, given that we have Guru Buddha, we would say,
Om Guru Buddha Argam Pratisahum Svoha. Om Guru Buddha Padyam Pratisahum Svoha. Acqua per lavare.
Water to wash feet, and the mudra to wash, water for washing the feet. these mudras are always done at the height of the heart, so close to our heart. So we have the left hand is closed in a fist, and the right hand, the thumb is touching the base of our ring finger, as if, and the right hand scoops up the water, and the left hand is like the foot, and so we wash the foot with the right hand. So we have
Guru Buddha Padyam Pratishtha Hum Swaha.
the next one, Pushpe, which means flower.
Guru Buddha Pushpe Pratishtha Hum Swaha. Pushpe.
Pushpe, you have the two hands close with the fingers inside and the thumbs that cover the fingers, and then we open up our fingers like a flower that blossoms. Flower, pushpe, flower. Then the next one is dupe, which is incense, and from here the mudras you can do in two different ways. There's one way where the divinities who offer have two arms, and or they are visualized with four arms. So in the highest tantra practices, the divinities are imagined with four arms. So if we're doing practices of high tantra, then we imagine the four arms, otherwise with two. And so we can do it in either way. The next one is incense. So when there's four, we imagine that the divinity has the two lower arms holding the incense burner, and the other two hands are, and then the other two hands, they're putting incense into the container that's below, and with the fingers cross each other. Instead, if just two hands, then we imagine like many incense sticks, and we keep our hands with the palms upward instead of downward. The next one is aloke, light. So normally we keep the hands closed a little bit with the thumbs up, and this is representing also the light of the sun and the moon. And this is the Anuttara Yoga Tantra, highest Yoga Tantra. Instead, if it's if a lower tantras, you bring the middle fingers up like this. It's a little strange for our culture. It's a little strange to make this mudra. It's not so nice in our culture, but there is this other way where we touch. So you can either do it. You can do that first way with the thumbs up, with the sun and the moon, or with the middle fingers up. And then gende for the perfume, we have with the two hands, we have the perfume that they're spreading over the chest. If there are four hands, you have the two hands out because the container is below, and if it's just the lower tantras, you have the left hand holding the container of oil or fragrant scents, and the right hand goes out. And then Niwide is the food, and then Shabdas, the last one, is the music. You can play the bell. You can, if you have the bell and vajra in your hand, you should take it at the beginning of the offerings, and in this moment you can play the tamar, the tamburo or the bell with the right hand. You put your ring finger and um, if we don't have a bell in this moment, there are two different ways. Either the hands are always the same, so you have the thumb over the pinky and the ring finger, and you have your pointer finger and your middle finger together, and you put them together as if they were symbols, or you can, so the two symbols that meet, or like a drum up and down. So there are two different ways. When we do it with time, it would be like this.
Omo Guru Buddha Argam Pratishsahum Swaha. Omo Guru Buddha Padyam Pratishsahum Swaha. Om Guru Buddha Pushbe Pratishsahum Swaha. Om Guru Buddha Dube Pratishsahum Swaha. Om Guru Buddha Aloke Pratishsahum Swaha. Om Guru Buddha Gende Pratishsahum Swaha. Om Guru Buddha Nividye Pratishsahum Swaha. Om Guru Buddha Shabda Pratishsahum Swaha.
The other way, which is easier for the visualization, we start with the opening and we do all 8 offerings and then we close.
Omo Guru Buddha Argam Padyam Pushbe Dupe Aloke Gende Nevidye Shabda Pratishsahum Swaha.
And this is the part of external offerings. If we make the same mudras in the lower tantras,
Padyam Pushbe Dube Aloke Gende Nevidye Shabda Pratishsahum Swaha.
okay? Are you following? The inner offering that we do, we recite Oma Guru Buddha, and then at the end we say Oma Ahum. And then if you have in front of you the object of the inner offering like this, you always with the ring finger of your left hand that touches this representation of the nectar of the inner offering, and then you bring at the height of your forehead and you offer it. And even if you don't actually have the object, you can still do it. The inner offering, as we already said, it represents this the generation of this inner bliss, the mind and body in a pure state that is in a state of bliss that realizes the ultimate nature of all phenomenon. Then the secret offering is this inner state of great bliss, and the emptiness offering, one makes the offering of emptiness by reflecting on emptiness depending on one's own level, thinking that all phenomenon exist in an interdependent way, and as a consequence they are not independent or objective as they appear. So when we make the offerings here, it can be something very long and detailed, or it can be very brief. But what's important is to do it with our heart and try really to offer. Sometimes we can be trapped in the formalities of how we should recite, how we should make the mudras, instead of imagining that we are offering the best of what we have. This is something very, very important. So one offers one's own body, speech, and mind. One offers everything one possesses, and it can be manifested in the form of objects of any kind. We offer the best of what we have, the best that we can. I repeat, this act of offering is really beautiful. It's an act of that generates an inner state of joy, but we need to have our own experience. So just in a few words, we've finished the part of offerings. There's a correlation between the types of offerings and types of realizations. Some kinds of offerings create favorable conditions, like a positive interdependence, to have certain types of realizations, but we're not going to go into these details now. On a simple level, we imagine that we're offering, and what's important is that when we offer Guru Buddha in front of us, he receives the offerings and experience an inner state of joy, bliss, happiness, and we concentrate. This is an important part of our making offerings. The function of the offering is to generate an inner state of bliss. I just add something that might mean a lot to some and nothing to others. I don't want to get into too many details. The most excellent way of making offerings is that the offerings should be done with the awareness that the three circles of offerings are empty of inherent of existence. The three circles are who offers, who receives, and what is offered. So Guru Buddha is empty of inherent existence. The offerings are empty of inherent existence, and I who offer am empty of inherent existence. So one makes the offering with the awareness of the lack of inherent existence of the three circles of offerings. This is one aspect, that when one does that, then just simply offering water, then the emptiness offering is already included. As we said before, one offers to create causes. It's by offering that we receive. When we make offering of emptiness, we create the causes to be able to receive, to be able to realize emptiness. In the offerings, there's another part that is present in two parts of the 6 dharmas of preparations, which is the mandala offering. It represents offering the entire universe. One offers everything. One goes beyond one's own judgment of what one likes, what one doesn't like. I offer everything, going beyond even myself. Because normally when we offer what we like. And in this case, we go beyond also, what we like, what we don't like. I offer the entire universe. And in this offering, called the mandala offering, that can be done in 2 different times, that once while we're making the offerings, and then also as a way to request blessings, and it's done towards the end. The mandala offering is used almost always when we're making a request, when we offer something. So normally at the beginning of teachings, at the end to thank, when we go towards the master and we want to offer something. Even when in Tibet they have this tradition to make offerings and to give money in envelopes, and they're very very detailed rules about what should be written on an envelope. So so if it's offered to the master, it should be, one should write the mandala offering, or if it's for a birthday, you put the gift inside the envelope and you write tender sutran, which means it's an offering for a virtuous interdependence. When someone does something and then one wants to thank, then it's written the offering to thank. So depending on what is done, there are different ways of writing on top on the envelope. This is very common in Tibetan culture. It's getting lost a little bit. So when we make offerings, we often make the mandala offering. We offer the entire universe, including oneself, one's body, speech, and mind. The gesture normally is called this gesture that's called. Let's try to explain it in a simple way. So we're going to touch. Let's put our two hands like this. Cross the pinkies and the ring fingers, and let's touch the pinkies with our thumbs, and then the ring fingers, they touch back to back, and then our middle fingers, our pointer finger, our index fingers, grab our middle fingers. So here we see in the middle we have the center of the universe, Mount Meru, and then we have the four sides. We have the four directions, the representation of the universe. So this is according to Tibetan cosmology. It can represent just this planet or the entire universe. So normally when we do this, to not keep our hands empty, given that it's an offering, we can take the mala, doubled, and we put it inside the hands. Or you could also, if one has a container with some rice, it's not something that maybe that you always have, but you put a little bit of rice in your hands, just a little bit, and then one makes the offering, and at the end, and that last verse, the verse, there are different verses, but Sashipuki is the most common. So I offer to you this how do you say this ground that is purified with incense and adorned with flowers, with Mount Meru and the four continents, the sun and the moon. I offer it to you as the pure land of the Buddhas. No, we say it, we always say it, but hold on. May all beings enjoy this pure land. In reality, when we end, we close it up towards ourselves, and if you have the rice in your hand, then you throw it in the air, like offering it to the Buddhas. Otherwise, we just close up towards ourselves, which represents us receiving the offerings. There's something very important related to the mandala offering. It's important for various reasons. When we offer the mandala, what we're offering is the universe as a pure land. so that the Buddhas, so you imagine a land that's completely free of pollution and conflict. And as the verse itself says, I offer this pure land so that all Buddhas enjoy it, and may every sentient being enjoy this pure land too. What's said is that there's a kind of relationship between what we offer and what we're going to receive. It's said that the offering of the mandala offering, it's it's one of the most important causes to be able to live, to stay in a pure environment. So we are strongly influenced by our own environment, and we have important problems with the environment in general on this planet Earth, and we see this very clearly. So on a more subtle level, for a spiritual cause to live in a pure offering, we make the mandala offering, we offer a pure environment as a cause to also enjoy a pure environment. I'm trying to simplifying it a little bit, but it's quite clear, isn't it? And one of the practices that we do when we do the accumulation of the preliminary practices, we do the mandala offering 100,000 times. And when you make a mandala offering, normally there's I don't know if we have it here. Where's the mandala offering? If I don't have it here handy, tomorrow I'll show you. Normally there's a container that is a little bit like an upside down singing bowl, smaller. And what's important, tomorrow I'll show you how to do it well. So you put a little bit of grains or rice or stones, and with the right hand, now there's the sound of the singing bowl. With the right hand, you turn 3 times outside with the wrist that touching, and then at least 3 times towards yourself, at least 3, and sometimes many more, and then you add a little bit more, and then 3 times outside again. Even Lama Tsongkhapa, for example, when he did his retreat, he did some millions of mandala offerings, and the basis that he used was a big stone that he had. And today you can see that stone has been used up. There's a mark from him. So we're taking away, we're cleaning our mind from any kind of non-pure motivation, and then when we turn towards ourselves, we're generating the positive, the right motivation for our mandala offering. And then there are these kind of rings that we fill it up with stones, or we fill it up with grains, and then and we stack it up, and it's the same thing that is represented by this mudra, this gesture that we showed before, which is fine. And when we make this offering, we're offering the entire universe a perfect environment, perfect in the sense that it is free from any form of pollution or conflict, etc. And we're by offering a pure environment, we are creating the causes to be able to enjoy a pure environment. So these verses, the most common verse that we recite is Sashipuki. So I offer to you the assembly of Buddhas visualized in front of me, this mandala anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, sun and moon. I offer this as a pure land to all the Buddhas. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure world, this pure land. This is the meaning of this verse. And this is what we do also at the beginning of the teachings, to ask for the teachings, and it's what we do at the end to thank. It's done in many, many different occasions. Also, if you see it here to my left, there's an object with five points and that ribbon, and sometimes it's offered to the master. I'll show you what it is, so you at least then we can end this. So this, for example, this represents the mandala offering, because it's the same thing that we do with our hands. In the middle there's Mount Meru, the center of the universe, which there are two representations. For the whole universe, or just this planet, which would be Mount Kailash at the center, and then there are the four continents, and or the universe on a greater so like in a bigger sense. And then there's also, when we offer the stupa, then there's a statue, and then the stupa. So we're offering body, speech, and mind. So this external mandala, I'm offering the external mandala. I'm offering the universe, a pure land, and an inner mandala. I'm offering myself, a speech and body. And so we can also do the mandala offering together with the other offerings. Here, I just repeat one more time, one of the reasons why we make a mandala offering is to create this positive interdependence, to experience and live in a healthy, pure environment. So with this, we conclude in a very brief way a part of the offerings. Tomorrow we will see briefly the part of purification, rejoicing, asking for teachings, asking to the request to remain, and dedications. And we will also see the part about receiving blessings. So I will try to concentrate well, because the day after tomorrow we'll have a different kind of program. I was just talking with Lama Caroline about that. The other day when the oracle came, there was a moment where I had questions. I had specific questions that had to do with the center and other things. And then the oracle said, no, privately I will answer you. And then the next day at the house, he gave me the answer on various things. And in that moment, he gave indications for certain practices that we should do, dedicated to the swift return of Lama Michel Rinpoche. And one of those practices is a sutra, Dorja Demo, that I didn't know. And yesterday I found the sutra with the translation, the phonetics. And today Renata is doing the layout. And so Sunday we should recite here at Albagnano. We should write it at least 1,000 times a month. So so if we're together with 10 people, so I wanted to start this Sunday and not let any time go by. It's a sutra specific to the elimination of interferences, and we'll do the transmission of the sutra together, and we will recite it together this Sunday. Tomorrow we'll have the same program. The day after tomorrow, on Sunday, we'll do the meditation in the morning, and then we will have a short inauguration for the opening of the new road. So today you can already use it. They're taking down all the barriers, and Sunday at 11 o'clock, in front of the Colonia, we'll have an inauguration and a way to thank those who have worked on the road. And we'll do also do something. Actually, we'll do something else to thank everyone who's worked on the road. So today and tomorrow we will finish the six preparatory dharmas. What's important is that all of these practices, from the first of cleaning the place to the last, the way of practicing and understanding is not linear. It's like a spiral. We repeat it many times, and as you repeat it, you understand a little bit more. You find more taste in what you're doing. So there's no hurry in trying to understand everything. It's a graduated path to learn and experience. It's not like, okay, I've already done this lesson, I've learned, I know what the 7 limbs are. No, we can always go into more details, learn more aspects. So now it's time for our dedications.
Jetsun lame kotse rapten chi namkara tinle chokchur ge padang losan tempe dreme sasumgi drowe munsela takto ne gyur chi kewa konto yanda lamada drame cheke pela lonche chin sada lamge yente rabzone dorje change kopa nyur tobe shoya nimodele tsendele nime kunyan delekshi ninsen taktu delekpe kuncho sumke chingelo kuncho sumke ngodrubutsol kuncho sumke trashisho.
When we make the mandala offering, just one more thing, there's the external symbolism with this gesture, and then also inner, where we imagine the spinal cord is Mount Meru, the limbs are the 4 continents, the 2 eyes are the sun and the moon. There's a whole visualization where our entire body is visualized and offered.
Lama Sangye Rinpoche, Kyobalame Tamcho Rinpoche, Trembalame Gendu Rinpoche, Kyamne Kuncho Sumla Chopa. Buon appetito.
Buon appetito. Thank you, everyone.